Hi everyone and welcome back to the Bakehouse Kitchen. Today I'm going to do a two-part recipe. First of all, I'm going to make some shortcrust pastry, and when we've let that rest in the fridge for a while, I will be then using that pastry to make a quiche. So we'll do that in two bits. We'll do the pastry first and then we'll do another film when we come to put together the quiche. So, pastry wise, to be quite honest, up until this point, I've been quite lazy with pastry. I mean, I made pastry a lot at school when I used to do home economics and all that sort of stuff. But over the years, when you become a busy mum and pastry is cheap to buy at the supermarket, that tends to be what has happened. And so I have been buying pastry. However, in lockdown, we can't do that anymore. And so I think one of the good things actually about this lockdown is sending us back to basics, and I'm actually quite looking forward to doing this. So the recipe I'm using is from Richard Bertinet's book called Pastry, and I'm making what he calls salted pastry, which is basically a shortcrust pastry for savoury things. He does a sweet version if you're making like fruit tarts or whatever, but we're basically going to use the salted version. So he also recommends that you make a lot of pastry, you double up, and then you can cut what you don't need off of your piece of pastry and freeze it, and then when you need it in the future you just need to defrost it and it's all ready to go for you. So I'm not really sure how big this recipe is going to show us or make up. I'm obviously going to make a large quiche. So it might be that I've got leftovers, it might not, we'll wait and see. So basically what we need is 250 grams of plain flour. So in that goes. To that we need 5 grams of salt, and that could be a teaspoon, but Richard Bertinet is a stickler for exact measurements. So he actually measures his salt on a scale, and that's exactly what I've done. So there's exactly 5 grams of salt in there. So in that goes. And then basically what you do is give that a little whiz round, and you get your butter. Now, butter wise, we need 125 grams of butter. Just 1 second while I whip to the fridge. Now, as a lot of you probably have heard over the years, some people say, oh, I can't make pastry, my hands are too hot, or the best pastry is made with people with cold hands and that sort of thing. That's not actually 100% true. The best thing that you can do is have your ingredients, as in your butter, straight from the fridge, not soft at all, which is completely the opposite to what we were told when we were at school. We were told use soft butter, and have your water and your egg, everything cold. As long as it's cold, you know, you've got time to mess around with it. If you really do believe I can't do it because my hands are so hot, you can actually either run your hands under cold water beforehand, or even worse, you can pick up handfuls of ice until you freeze your hands and then do the pastry that way. What I'm going to do is I've got my butter straight from the fridge, and I'm going to put it between 2 pieces of greaseproof paper in a block, just like that. There we go. Put paper on top, and then use a rolling pin to bash it till it's almost flat, and that will make your butter pliable, but it will still be very cold. So I'm going to do this, but we'll come back because I don't want you listening to thump, thump, thump when I bash that out of this. So I'll be back in a sec. So here we have my bashed butter between 2 pieces of greaseproof. It's There we go. It's about 3mm thick, I guess, but it's still incredibly cold. So that just goes straight in. And it's a bit like plasticine or Play-Doh or whatever. So now all you do is you cover your butter with flour and you tear it into bigger lumps, and then you start breaking it down basically. The best thing you can do is be as light as you can. So let's cover it with flour first and then break it into bigger lumps. And then rather than the old method of rubbing it in until you get to breadcrumbs, you don't need to work it that far. Basically, if you want a good short pastry which isn't greasy, the recommended way of doing things is to pick up as much flour from the bottom of the bowl as you can, and then just run your thumbs forward over the blocks or the pieces of butter, and you'll feel them just slip through your fingers, and you're not making a buttery mess basically. And you need to just do this until your bits of butter are about as big as your fingernails. So you don't need to make it into tiny little breadcrumbs. That's old school now. And one thing that Richard Bertinet does stress is do not overwork your pastry. So that's it, I've done it. We'll get John to do a close-up in the bowl so you can see. Tiny bits of butter, no breadcrumbs there. Right, now once you've got to that stage, you add the water. Now this is still really light and fluffy, as you can see, and that's exactly what you want. You do not want it to be thick and greasy and sticky, because if it's greasy and sticky at this stage, by the time you've added the water and the egg, it's going to be extremely sticky. So now in go the wet ingredients, which is literally 35 grams of cold water straight in, and 1 egg, a medium egg, and you don't even need to beat it. So in that goes 2.
And just very quickly again, you weighed the water.
Yes, the water was weighed, not measured. So then you take a scraper or a spoon or a knife or whatever you've got, and basically you start mixing in your wet ingredients. Now there is not a lot of wet in here, so it's not going to go really sticky. If it goes sticky, something's wrong. The good thing about these little plastic scrapers is you can cut and you can mix and you can get right into the corners of your bowl. Right, so I've mixed in the wet stuff and it looks like this currently. Doesn't look like a bowl of pastry, but that's good because that's not what we want. So the next thing to do is to use your hands to try and bring it together a bit more. And all you're going to do is just catch hold of the dough and lightly scrunch it to try it and bring it together. You can do this with your fingertips or your thumbs or however you want to do it. It's not going to come together in a big ball just like that. So this is the second stage. This is me mixed as much as I can in the bowl. Okay, so next I'm going to get, we've got a granite slab, but you can use whatever you want. And I'm going to tip this out onto the slab. Just like that. I mean, your bowl is basically clean, so that's a good sign. And and then you just try and lightly bring your pastry together.
I will say, while you're doing that, it does look incredibly short, which is great, which is shortcut
That's
pastry.
exactly what we want.
And we've never tried this recipe. We bought Richard Bertinet's books over the last couple of weeks, so this will be really interesting to see how good this is compared to kind of shop bought.
There we go. Now you can see the pastries come together really quite easily, and then what he wants you to do is basically fold it over on itself, and again go back with your thumbs and just press your thumbs into it a bit to make a nice block. Now what he recommends is that you make a square type shape, so that you've got a nice square piece of pastry ready for when you start rolling it out, so you haven't got raggedy edges. So he recommends that once you've got it into a block as such, you just tap the edges to round or to square them up. There we go. Nice piece of pastry, square shape. And literally it is as simple as that, people. So now I'm going to take one piece of my greaseproof that I use to smash the butter up. You're going to put your bottom pastry in. Fell out. Hang on. There we go. You put it into a sheet of greaseproof, fold it up, and this goes into the fridge to rest. The pastry, it needs to go into the fridge for at least an hour, preferably longer, and ideally overnight. So we're going to stick this in the fridge now for an hour and let it rest, and that lets all of the gluten and stuff relax a bit, so you don't get tough pastry. So that is shortcrust pastry. Thanks for watching. Come back and see us make the quiche a bit later. See you soon. Bye for now.